Morning, Abraham.
It is.
Yes. In recent years, it seems that the peace and contentment that I felt deep inside has become rattled. It feels as if there is a discord within me, and I have minor irritations throughout most of my days. My life is really wonderful. I have a great job, make great money, have a great mate. I live on a farm with beautiful, loving creatures around me. My life's been through several changes the last couple years, and I'm wondering if I could be remaining attached to that possibly. I use scripting, segment intending, and they've been powerful, but they're not working right now for some reason. And I've always been a very powerful creator, but the vibration I seem to be repeating these days is very uncomfortable, and I'm just wanting some guidance on that.
Well, it's nice to know that any moment that you're out of alignment, even a little bit, there's some negative emotion present that says you're out of alignment. So, can you hear us when we say, you don't have to figure out why you're out of alignment. You just have to get in alignment. The only thing that matters is that you find a way of soothing yourself a little bit right now. Okay. So, are you aware? Clearly you are, because your dialogue just now indicates that you say your well-being is rattled. You can feel that you're a little out of balance. So give us an example of something like that, and we'll show you what we would do. Okay.
I kind of wake up sometimes, and I'm already rattled. I'm not sleeping good sometimes. I have very minor health things popping in. Am I answering your question? I've already lost it.
Well, here's what we want you to know. We want you to know that you're always in motion and you're always trying to find your balance, and that there's nothing wrong with you, that you're not steadily always in balance. In other words, that's one of the reasons that we offer so many examples about Jerry and Esther. We think you would be hard-pressed to find anywhere on this planet two happier people. We think you would be hard-pressed anywhere on this planet to find two healthier people, or two people that are having more fun, or two people that are having more success, or two people that are having a better life, or two people that are having a better adventure. But we offer endless stories about their imbalance as they bring themselves back into balance, because we want you to understand that it's always what you're about. In other words, you don't want to protect yourself so much that you don't allow yourself to think thoughts, but you don't want to think so many thoughts that you get yourself all out of balance. So it's a matter of choosing thoughts and come into alignment, and choosing thoughts and coming into alignment. So we can feel from the premise that you're offering here that you are approaching this like many people do. It's like there's something wrong and I need to solve it. And what we're trying to get across to you is that there's nothing wrong, but you are always wanting to bring yourself as close into alignment as you can. Not only because it will more positively affect your future manifestations, but because it causes you to feel better now. Right. So we want you, all of you, to begin recognizing that solving a problem is not about getting the circumstances to line up. Solving the problem is taking an emotional journey and feeling better at the end of the journey than at the beginning. Solving the problem is just finding a way to talk myself into feeling better now, because as I talk myself into feeling better now, I've lined up the misalignment, and now I'm tapped back into the energy stream, and now well-being can come into my experience faster. These are very interesting times in your world, in your highly evolved, highly technologically connected world. It used to be that the only trauma that you felt in your village was the trauma that you witnessed, or the trauma that someone else explained to you. And since your villages weren't that big, and since well-being predominates everywhere you are, most of you did not have such a disproportionate amount of bad news flowing into your experience in relationship with good news. Now, you are connected to the entire world, and you have news associations who think that it is their responsibility. It certainly ups their ratings if they can scour the planet and find the worst of the worst of the worst that's happening, amplify it, put music behind it, exaggerate it, and bring it to you never-endedly. And so you are getting a disproportionate amount of stimulation about what's going wrong in relationship to what's going right. Okay. And that is causing a sort of vibrational unrest that, if you get somewhere in vibrational proximity of, is going to sort of rattle your experience. Jerry and Esther have been commenting to each other as they began the summer, and they just went from beautiful place to beautiful place to beautiful place to beautiful place to beautiful place. The windows were open at night when they slept. They barely saw a raindrop while they were parked or while they were driving. And if you were following them around, you would think that this planet has perfect weather always. In other words, you wouldn't think that there is anything other than perfection everywhere you go. Even when they went into Arizona, which Esther was tensing about just a little bit because they'd been in Malibu and they'd been in San Francisco and they'd been in Seattle and they'd been in San Diego, and they were so much enjoying the wonderful weather. And as they drove across the desert, they turned the generator on and turned all the air conditioners on and wore sweaters because it was so cold as they crossed the desert. And when they got into Sedona, the weather had cooled down and they slept with their windows open. It was so cold they had to close the windows. And so what we are getting at here is you in time can achieve vibrational alignment with well-being in such a way that you will feel as if you are moving around in a sort of protective bubble. But we don't like to use the word protective. We want to say a bubble of well-being. In other words, there's an atmosphere of well-being that surrounds you, and everywhere you go gives you real-life feedback in response to what you're living. So you are like most teachers. You care a little too much about what's happening outside of your ability to control it. Esther stood in the lounge at the RV repair place yesterday for a little bit, and there were several people around, and they were all watching the television, and the subject was the hostages, one of which had been beheaded. And Esther looked at their faces as she watched them watching, and everyone was silent. And when Esther walked into the room, she had her computer bag with her and her purse over one shoulder, and she was so exhilarated about what was happening in her life and feeling invincible about how things were working out for her. And her vibration was so different than the vibration that was in the room that when she walked into the room, everyone looked at her as if she was a monster who had landed from outer space. Her energy was so different, and she is laughing, and then she could feel the somberness of the room. And there was a woman sitting very close to Esther and watching the news. Esther did not say anything to anyone. The woman said to Esther, "I can't stand watching this." And Esther remained quiet, nodded as if she understood. And then the woman said what Esther has heard Abraham say endlessly: "I can't do a damn thing about it. All it does is screw up my life when I get involved." And someone across the room looked like those were fighting words. He wanted to say, if we don't get involved, then we can't solve anything. And Esther just gathered up her things and off she went. In other words, she realized that there are too many dynamics to try to solve. If Esther had made a decision that she would devote the rest of her life to making that cluster of 30 people understand what she knows, it would have been a full-time, lifetime job. And instead, she just loved them and acknowledged that they will create their own reality, and that whatever they need, the next step will come to them, and that it's not her job to save them, and that they don't need saved, and that they are making their lives work in the way they are making their lives work. And she is making her life work in the way she is making her life work. This is the unrest that is within you. We don't think it's the details of your own experience very much. We think you're sensitive to energy. And we think that you are like so many magnificent, deliberate creators. We think you feel guilty about living a good life when there are so many around you who are not living a good life. And we want to say to you, you can't get sick enough to help sick people get well. Oh, and you can't get confused enough to help confused people get clear. And you can't get worried enough to bring peace to the hearts of mothers that are worried. In other words, you just have to pull out of the vibration that feels uncomfortable when you're in it. You just have to follow your signals that will always lead you back to your own well-being. And through the clarity of your example, others may follow. We don't feel anything disruptive in your vibration. We just feel a sloppy willingness to observe things that are none of your business. Really, that's all it is. Okay. That's all it is. And before you leave this room here today, we would like all of you to know whether you can apply it right now, this red hot minute or not. We want you to leave here knowing that you can massage yourself into a place of feeling better about anything every time. And as you begin practicing, in other words, practice with each other. When you find yourself talking about things that bother you, it's interesting to watch where your thresholds are. Esther sort of enjoys watching some of the CNN. She likes some of the political commentary. She likes to think about those things. But she drew the line when something tragic happened to the children in Russia. She could not bear to watch any part of that news. And it was an interesting thing because it crossed the line with her. In other words, it took her in too painful of a place. And we say, we would like all of you to move that sensitive line into a much higher place. We would like you to reach the place that you're not willing to listen to people criticize one another. We would like you to reach the place where you take no satisfaction from somebody being wrong, which makes you feel that you're more right. We want you to get so sensitive that it matters to you so much that you feel good, that you are only willing to think positive things about people, that you are only willing to look for their positive aspects, that you are only willing to look for solutions, that you're not willing to beat the drum of all of the problems. In other words, you'll get to the place where you want so much to feel good that you will be often the odd one that walks into the room. The odd one that walks into the room. And so we think what happens is so many of you have been seeking approval from those that are in the room for so long and not wanting to be the odd one that was in the room, that you were willing to adjust your vibration from wherever you were to match whatever was going on. And then you're all in that same confused place where you can't help each other, you see. And fortunately, there are always those who remain connected to Source, who can offer an example of clarity. You have your own inner guidance that will take you there. So, from now on, rather than say, there are these things that are bothering me and my life is feeling a little rattled, you want to offer more soothing words. I'm really doing very well. My life is really going very well. Most everything is working very well. In other words, soothe yourself, soothe yourself, soothe yourself, soothe yourself, soothe yourself, soothe yourself, soothe yourself into alignment. You can do it. And when you do, it will show in every way. You'll radiate health. You'll radiate prosperity. You'll radiate clarity. In other words, you just can't thrive without it being obvious. And you can't feel good without thriving. And you can't feel bad and thrive. In other words, you've got to decide where that line is. You've got to decide how much grief you're willing to endure. Oh, I was willing to watch CNN until they started chopping off heads, and then I turned off the television. And we say, well, that's a good thing. Wonderful to come together with those like you who are coming more and more in every day to understand who you are. We really make far too much of this. It's appropriate that you want to feel good, and it's normal that you do feel good, but it isn't wrong when you don't feel good. Just continue to want to feel good, and let that be your dominant quest. And don't try to compare how good you feel with how good anybody else feels. Let how good you feel be only important as it relates to how good you have felt. We want you to know that the releasing of resistance is the finding of relief, and that it is possible to find relief in every emotion. There is relief in anger from that feeling of despair, and there is relief in frustration from anger, and there is relief in hoping from doubting, and there is relief in knowing from believing. There is relief in joy and passion and ecstasy, and we want you to know that you will never achieve a state of emotion from which there is not more potential relief. There is no limit to how good we can become or how good we can feel. So just keep reaching for what feels good, and don't compare yourself to how good anybody else feels. And don't try to guide yourself from the outside in. Instead, make a determination that you're going to start guiding yourself from the inside out. And most of all, lighten up and be easy about it. We want you to approach this life in exactly the way you intended as you came forth. It's a creative vacation in which you intended to have a really good time. It's not an assigned project where you are supposed to do something.